What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about what's going on with Ford and SPY and Tesla and the QQQ. I'm going to break down what's happening with the charts and what you should be watching for moving forward, and also what's going on with the debt ceiling and the data that just came out. Before I break anything down about all this information, though, before I talk about what's happening with many of these different tickers from SPY to Nvda to Aapl to the QQQ to Tesla and beyond, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla share. The offer ends tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so looking at the markets, as I mentioned earlier, I was not really liking the price action we were seeing when it comes to like being a bull or anything like that. And right now, we're starting to see more signals that the market is starting to top and weaken. It's quite overextended, and we're likely going to see the bears take advantage of this, in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people are just, very, very concerned. They're very, very cantankerous when it comes to things like that and claims like that. But I want to break down why I still hold this standpoint, why I still hold this view, and what this means for the markets. Now, for some companies such as Coinbase, we had the SEC announcing something very big. I can't talk into too many details about this, but this settlement right here was very big for them, and this caused the share price to soar, which was good, but there's no guarantee it's going to last forever or even a very, very long period of time. Let me also add that for tomorrow, we have Chewy and Nordstrom all reporting earnings, alongside Thursday having Macy's and Dell as well. So we have some very interesting earnings. Dell is going to be one of the biggest ones for Thursday. And besides that, for Wednesday, we have some mortgage data coming out that will be very important. And then we have the JOLTS job openings and job quits with some Fed speakers as time goes on for tomorrow. But the biggest thing is going to be the job openings and then the PMI report. So for the first 15 minutes, expect lots of volatility at 9:45 a.m. expect volatility thanks to PMI. Then at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, we have the JOLTS job openings and the JOLTS job quits. So lots of volatility during the first 15 minutes, the first 30 minutes, and then followed by the first hour as we have some data from the Fed services coming out. Lots of data is coming out, so we expect lots of volatility in the beginning, but the charts are telling us something else that's very interesting. With the whole AI situation that's going on and all these ads involving AI, the market and many different stocks like Nvda have made some very nice moves. There has been some talk about this potentially helping Apple, but for now, Apple's share price is not looking the strongest. It is trying to base where it's at, but there are some things we have to look at. Now, for the options chain for SPY, there's not a whole lot going on. It's very, very small compared to other days, at least for tomorrow and beyond. But now I want to break down how this relates to the market for now. So let's talk about Ford. What's happening with Ford first? I know a lot of people are requesting this. Let me just mention that Ford is very tight. Ford is a very tight stock. We have some major resistance between 12.8 and $13. Okay, that's where the strong resistance is. If we want to turn bullish, we have to break 12.8. If that gets broken, the high of the day, it could touch 13 plus. Now, if it fails to do so and it gets rejected, 12.5 is some very important support. It's a little bit down in the after hours, but 12.5 is what we're going to be watching. If 12.5 fails, Ford has the potential to come all the way down for a 50 EMA retest at 12.32, followed by an even lower level into 12 flat or lower into the high 11s. Now, we have this gap down here around 12. If it breaks below the 50 EMA, it's going to likely fill this gap down here. Where am I leaning in terms of this price action? Well, let me just note that looking at it, just to double check, give me just 1 second, things are not looking, that great for it. We are getting some signals suggesting that we are in a topping process. And looking, I believe, at the hourly time frame, I think it was either like the 30-minute or the hourly time frame, there's a bearish divergence on the 1 hour time frame that has developed. Looking at the RSI, and Ford needs to break 12.82 and validate it. If 12.78 holds as the high and Ford fails to break that, it's most likely going to get a big rejection and a rug pull all the way down to the lower 12s. Why am I also saying that? Well, it's not just Ford, but it's also many other stocks. Unfortunately, I do think the odds favor that. I think it's very likely Ford is going to retest 12.5 at the very least, potentially break down even lower. And I'm also saying that because of SPY, QQQ, Tesla, Nasdaq, and many other stocks out there. All right, so when it comes to SPY, let me just add that we got this nice pump in the morning, but I told you we have to watch for confirmation. We had to hold 421 for us to remain very bullish, okay? And it failed to do that. Then it broke below 420, and I released a video around this time. We actually pumped a little bit after I released the video, which is pretty ironic. The reason that happened was because some person from Congress known as McCarthy, not McCarthy, I think it was McHenry, came out and started saying some positive things. And then McCarthy came out after that. McCarthy came out later on. And then he said more positive things about the debt ceiling. And the market just started pumping a little bit. Then we saw a VWAP retest followed by a trigger of many stops. So it was all just a trap to trigger lots and lots of stops and to trick lots of investors. And the market didn't really do anything too huge, though. Even though we got this tiny bounce, like I said before, the bigger trend is still favoring the bears looking at this MACD or the MACD, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter to me. Looking at this, it's still looking weaker. Now, look at where we closed, 420.18. We were below 420, and then at the last 2 minutes, they pumped us just to mess with the people with the 0 day to expiration options. And on top of that, they barely held 420. SPY was below 420 for a large sum of the day, and it sold off for the majority of the day, looking weak. So what am I seeing right here? Well, we still need more confirmation, of course, but the odds are starting to greatly favor more downside to come because we have this imbalance down here, and the algos are going to try to bring the price down to balance the net flow. And on top of that, with the whole debt ceiling, I mean, the market's just not as surprised by it because it knows uh, Congress is going to vote on it and really help the market because of that. But it's not really a big surprise. I think maybe when Congress announces the vote, we could get another pump, but that may take a couple of days. And until then, some of the hype is starting to die out, and we did form a bearish divergence on SPY on the 1 hour time frame. It's a little hard to see. You could see it more on the 30-minute, I believe. So, like on the 30-minute, for example, you could see, I don't know if it's the 30-minute, I think it's the 1 hour. But, anyways, you can see we continue to just pump here while the RSI just continued to downtrend. I think the 1 hour, it looks a little bit better. It's easier to see on the 1 hour. But if anything, it's just remaining in this trend. So right here, the RSI started declining while we made this higher high. A little bit hard to see, I know, but you can see it right here. RSI went lower while this went higher. And then we got this bearish cross on the PPO. So this is all pointing the direction of the market cooling off. Then we have a potential head and shoulders like pattern that's forming right here, right? We can see a left shoulder ahead, and we're starting to form this right shoulder here. Could lead to a rug pull very soon. And I think the odds are starting to favor that as lots of the hype and momentum is slowing down. For the QQQ, it closed below 350, not the best of signs, and it has the same thing going on with this bearish divergence, the crossover on the PPO, and a potential head and shoulders like formation. I'm going to be watching how it responds to about 348, then 345. 345.73 specifically is going to be very important. If it breaks below that, we're going to get a rug pull down to 340. Is it going to be a massive crash? I don't want to make that call just yet because first off, we're still at some very high levels. Secondly, we haven't broken major support yet to make that call. So that's why I'm not really staying in that standpoint. I'm more like thinking about how we need to watch it from a level to level basis. That's the best way to look at this. And we are forming a potential head and shoulders for now. To turn bullish, it has to break the high of the day. If it breaks it, we could get closer to 360. But so far, it failed to do so, and the odds are starting to favor us retesting 345 very soon. The HYG, it's also, it was pumping as we saw some smart money buying to some degree. But let me just add that this overall is still trading very sideways. If you look at the last couple of days, we've been going like back and forth. And we are losing some momentum up here, right? At the very top, it's continuing to lose some momentum. It's just not looking as strong as before. And I think it's best for us to just remain patient and wait to see what the bonds traders end up doing. NEO is going to make a big reaction to the market, and then its deliveries data, which is coming out in just a couple of days. So be on the lookout for NEO. I'm expecting a very big move once the deliveries report comes out around June 1st or 2nd. The Nasdaq, very flat, but it's losing momentum. We're about to get a bearish cross on the PPO, and we are still overbought. There's also this gap up here. Let me show you this gap. It's down here, not up here, down here. We haven't fully filled this gap. We don't really have a close below it or like a very strong bar below it. Then we have this imbalance way down here on the 12,700 area. It looks to me like this thing is likely going to start cooling off a little bit. We're starting to show more and more signs of bearish indicators, and we may see the Nasdaq help the market drop. The VIX was very flat during close. It's very interesting. Very, very flat. There could be a potential inverse head and shoulder forming here, right? We have the head right here, the left shoulder, the potential right shoulder. If that's the case, we could see the VIX get a big spike in volatility as the market cools off just a little bit. On the SQQQ, not seeing the same thing, but there is this like accumulation phase that's developing right here. It was very, very oversold this morning and started to bounce a little bit. It looks like it has a little bit more room to try to continue to push to the upside. The dollar index, very, very flat. It's not doing a whole lot. It's only down like 0.13%, but you have to remember the dollar has been breaking out already, and that tends to cause the market to fall. We haven't really seen the market fall yet because of the debt ceiling, and although the dollar is losing some momentum, if it's this overextended, this could be negative for the market. For Coinbase, if we want to remain bullish, you have to see this thing break above the 62 resistance. If it breaks, it's going to fly all the way up to the high of the day, if not higher. If we're bearish on Coinbase, we're going to be watching the 50 EMA. If it breaks below 58.69, it's going to come all the way down to 57 and potentially 55.8. But make sure you watch the 58 zone on it. That's going to be a very important support, and also 60. So watch those supports very carefully on this. In my opinion, the odds are favoring some choppy price action for now, depending on the news. As long as it doesn't get a bullish catalyst again, like the SEC filing news that came out, we could start to see this thing slow down over the next couple of days, potentially fill this gap all the way back down to the mid 50s. For Aapl, Aapl is not looking the best. I mean, there's a possible head and shoulders developing here. We failed to break 178 in a very strong manner, and we're continuing to chop a bit right here. Let me just also add that on the 1 hour time frame, Aapl has a potential bearish divergence right here. It's very tiny. It's a little hard to see, but you could see it quite clearly right here. And there's a crossover on the PPO, which is telling me Apple's losing a little bit of momentum. So if it is forming this head and shoulders, for it to invalidate it, it needs to break the high right here, 178.99. If it fails to do so, it's going to make its way down to the 50, which could fill this gap down here, which is where we have strong support simultaneously around 175. And the odds favor a retest of 175 for Aapl, in my opinion. The odds are starting to favor more downside just a bit for the markets. For Nvidia, 400 is going to be very important. We have to watch 400 carefully. If Nvidia breaks below 400, it's going to likely come all the way down to 390 to fill this gap. The odds would greatly favor that if that's the case, and looking at the current PPO level, it seems very likely. However, if Nvidia gets a nice bounce, it has to fight and try to break above 403. If it does so, it could get closer to 409. Right? If it breaks 409, 420 could come again technically, but I'm not leaning in that direction, seeing what Apple is doing alongside many other stocks. There's a potential head and shoulders also developing on Nvidia, and it is losing some momentum. The volume is just not as strong as before, and a slight cool off would be very natural for it. It is very, very strong still despite that, but that just seems more likely. Now, for Google, it's also losing momentum for the upside. It got a nice pump in the pre-market, but then it just sold off afterwards, and it just traded sideways as time went on. Google has this imbalance down at 121. If it breaks below support at 124, I'm going to be watching 121.6, maybe a little bit higher than that, because this 200 EMA is sloping upwards. Watch that very carefully. It's going to have a big effect on Google. The odds are favoring some downside. Could we bounce first and then see some downside? Yes, that's very possible. But for now, I'd be very, very patient with it. And I think the odds favor it coming right back down to the lower 120s. For the 10-year treasury yield, this thing is coming down pretty hard, but there is a gap above. Now, this is not affecting the markets like it typically does, but if it were to do that, right, this gap above getting filled would cause the market to cool off a bit. It's still a possibility, but I'm once again going to be very open-minded despite this. You could even argue there's a head and shoulders developing. If it moves with the market, then this head and shoulders could be correlated with some downside for the markets. If it moves against the market, which it has typically done, then this could cause the market to try to once again cool off as well. In my opinion, this is moving with the market, and it is forming a potential head and shoulders, which tells me there is a chance the market may start to cool off a little bit. For what is this? Amazon. Amazon has a bearish divergence developing right here on the PPO. We got a crossover. Amazon's not looking as strong to me as it did like a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago, sorry. But for the time being, it looks to me like Amazon's going to chop around between 123 and about 119. The 119 zone, closer to like 120, around there is just going to chop a little bit and may retest the 50 EMA around 119.34. If that fails, it's going to come all the way down to 116. So be careful on Amazon. There could be a head and shoulders developing here as there's a bearish divergence, but we need confirmation first. If it breaks 123, it's going to fly up to 125. So far, it failed to do so, and it just chopped around a bit. And I think the odds favor chopping around and maybe cooling off with the market, but always be open-minded nonetheless. Meta still has relative strength. I mentioned this in my previous videos. It reached almost 170, very close to my target, and now it's starting to cool off. It looks to me like it has a very sharp cool off right here. There's a good chance it's going to retest 259. 259 is where it's going to likely retest. If 259 fails at the 50, it's going to come all the way down to 252. So watch 259 very carefully as support. As far as resistance goes, we're going to be watching 265 and then 269 to 270 as major resistance. In my opinion, it looks to me like Meta is going to make an attempt to bounce. It could get a retest of 265 and maybe get rejected off there. And if the market finally gets to sell off, we're going to likely see it retest the 50 and then fail from there and just cool off a bit in a very healthy manner. So am I a mega bear? Not really. Am I a mega bull? Not really either. I just want to read the charts, and the charts are telling me that the market could chop around a bit, right? It could just chop around for a little bit longer before we start to see more downside. I think the odds are greatly favoring downside very soon over the next couple of days. There's likely going to be a sharp sell-off, so I want to warn you about that. And I think it's important to be very, very conscious of these levels. Now, I could change my opinion if we break the highs of the day for the QQQ and SPY, but for now, the market is just looking weak, and it just barely held support today. SPY barely closed above 420, QQQ closed below 350. So that's why I'm going to be cautious, and I am leaning a little bit more bearish for the next couple of trading days. So do what you have to do and remain calm, cool, and collected. I have some merch for you guys if you're interested in buying anything, from a shirt to a hoodie to a tank top that says buy the dip to the moon or something like that. And also don't forget about the Webull link. The offer ends tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. Alright guys, thank you for listening. That's what I have for this video. Watch confirmation. It's always very important to do so and to be very patient when trading and investing. Non-financial advice, by the way. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Market to the moon, as the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace out.